monkeypox or anybody who is a suspect case through our team and through our immunization team. So.
And I noticed that there was an email sent out, I believe by Kira, on kind of some of the protocol. Is there kind of like a click note version of kind of what to do if there's a suspected case?
Well, if there's a suspected case, of course, healthcare providers are providing testing for monkeypox. It is a quick skin swab. So it would be first, just recommending them to make contact with their healthcare provider or getting them to a clinic that's providing monkeypox testing. I believe that's on our website as well, what providers are providing that as well. And just general guidance for possible exposures is on the website as well. So.
Perfect. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you, everybody, for all the work you do. We appreciate you.
What was your very first job? And I'm going to ask everyone.
Oh my gosh. My very first job was at Wet Seal in the Northtown Mall. Yes, they had like I was like obsessed with it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever because they had this like section where if you bought something, you got something else for a penny. Yes. But like the store no longer exists, so I think we can figure out why. So, yeah.
Perfect.
And then I worked in frozen yogurt place the rest of high school, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. All right, so since we don't have a COC update, and then Jen Saracides is with us today, and she's going to kind of talk about CHHS along with some other things. So that's kind of going to be our CHHS update for today. So Jen, welcome to the Spokane Homeless Coalition. Thank you for making it. And is this your first time?
So this is my first time at the Homeless Coalition since I started this position. I was actually on the Homeless Coalition leadership back in 2008, I think. So I attended for several years back then. Oh, is that loud enough? Okay.
Nice. And what was your very first job?
My very first job, I was a lifeguard at Comstock Park. So actually, I worked for the city. That was my first job. Weirdly, here I am again.
Weird. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, just kind of fill us in. I understand you'll be kind of chatting about accessing funds, I guess, through in that process and what that looks like.
Yes, thank you. I feel a little bit like I'm on daytime television, so this is
thank you.
Kind of exciting.
Well, are we live
I should have worn more lipstick or something. I don't know. Okay, so one of the things that we get a lot of questions on is how do you know when we have a funding opportunity available and how to best apply for those funding opportunities. So for some of our larger organizations who apply regularly, they're pretty familiar with it, but if you're a smaller organization and you haven't applied for funding through the city, I thought it might be helpful to give kind of an overview of what that looks like. So I went old school and I brought paper copies so I can hand these out when we're done. Barry's giving me the no. He's going to try to email it out. Oh, he's working on it. He's going to maybe put it up on the screens. But in any case, if you get on the internet and you Google CHHS funding opportunities, oh, there it goes. It will take you to this webpage, and you can see right here over on the right-hand side where it says funding opportunity updates, and it says join the list. If you click on that and you fill out the form there, then you'll be put on the list to be notified anytime we have a funding opportunity that's posted to our webpage. The other thing that I think is important to note is if you go to our current RFPs, I don't know if you can get there. I think if you click on CHHS, Barry, it might take you. You can see current CHHS RFPs. Now, the host home ones actually should be moved because that one's now closed, but this is where you can go to see the funding opportunities that we have available. It'll usually give you kind of an overview of what that funding opportunity is, and then it will have the notice of funding availability, which will tell you all of the information that you need to know about that funding opportunity, and then there will be an application if that's part of that. One of the things that I'll see sometimes is I'll get applications that will come in that will not address the funding priorities or the required kind of services that we're looking for. We're trying to make it more clear when there's flexibility for there to be creativity in your submissions, and when there's requirements that have to be met by having pass-fail criteria listed at the beginning of applications, so that you know you have to meet these things in order to qualify and be moved on to the next round. The other thing that I think is worth talking about as well is that we always try to offer technical assistance workshops. And technical assistance workshops are where you can show up and just ask a bunch of questions about the funding opportunity, specific questions about your proposed plan. So please utilize those, because those are really available for you to come and ask us questions. I usually try to do a mix of technical assistance workshops, and then also one-on-one. So if you feel more comfortable setting up a one-on-one with myself or one of the program managers, then we can set you up with that as well. The other question that we get a lot around funding opportunities is what funds are available and how do we get them? So we kind of have a variety of pots of funding. We have our COC funding, and all of that runs through our COC board. The majority of those funds are renewals, and so they are funds that are essentially for a particular organization, and they can apply for a renewal. Sometimes there's a little bit of moving around within that, but we don't often have new projects. Sometimes we have new projects. Sometimes there's some new releases by HUD, so we had some additional funding this year in a supplemental application where we could submit new projects, and so that information would be available as something that somebody could apply for, and that usually happens in kind of the July-August timeframe for COC. The remaining dollars that we have are mostly tied up in what we call our HHOS funding source. And that has a wide variety of things that go into it. It has our HaHa dollars, it has just all sorts of sources, and that's on a 5-year grant cycle. So that goes all the way through 2024. So in the next year, we will be putting out a new RFP for a new 5-year grant cycle. But that's why you won't see a lot of funding opportunities coming through, because we took some of the feedback from our providers that it's hard to apply for funds every single year. And if we can do a 5-year award where you're guaranteed to have that money coming in, that was going to be more effective. So that is one of the routes that we went. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Yes, are there any announcements that come out? Like I know the CHHS communication, does that would that have a category in it that would say these funds are coming down the line, or application is opened, or how do people, I guess, get on the list of when those become available for that announcement? Right,
so that's going to be from that very first page that Barry showed you, and there's the join the list. I would sign up for the join the list, because when we post a funding opportunity to the webpage, we go to that list and we email everybody on that list and say, here's the funding opportunity. We do typically also put those into our CHHS updates, but those updates don't come out as regularly. I think they're on like a bi-weekly cycle. So if you wait for the CHHS updates, you may miss a whole funding cycle depending on how long that RFP is open for. So I highly recommend going to the funding opportunity updates and signing up for it there.
And we live in a competitive kind of world slash field of work. I'm super competitive, by the way. But so in that process of, competing, I guess, for funds, but also, my program's better than your, how does the selection process happen when proposals are submitted?
Great question. So there's two different processes. If it's through the COC board is responsible for reviewing those applications against the priorities that have been set by the COC, and then they make those recommendations, and then those flow to City Council, and City Council approves them. The second way is through the CHHS board, and that's for any funding that's not COC related, and similar, it goes to the board reviews the applications. Typically, we will try to give you in each application the priorities for the funding, what we're looking for, and those things fall into the scoring. So you really want to look closely at the application to be able to say, am I hitting those funding priorities? Am I serving the populations that they want to have served? Am I able to meet the outcomes that are requested? The other thing that I'd like to talk about a little bit is how valuable partnerships are. We always try to encourage people to have partnerships in their grant applications, and I know that can be challenging when you're dealing with money coming in, but if you have an idea and you want to be able to partner with somebody else in the community, that will automatically usually kind of raise your application from the points system because we're big fans of partnerships.
And is CMIS a requirement for submitting proposals? CMIS access?
So you don't have to have CMIS access in order to apply, but many of our funding sources will require that you utilize the CMIS system, and then we would work with you on onboarding that. And typically we would have that as a line item in the budget where you could kind of talk about like whether it's included in your case management costs or if you have a separate person who's doing data entry.
And for those that don't know, can you explain kind of what CMIS is?
Sure. So CMIS is Community Management Information System. Everywhere else, pretty much in the country, you'll see it referred to as the HMIS or Homeless Management Information System. We chose to go CMIS because we input data that's not just about folks that are experiencing homelessness, but it is essentially a database where we are tracking demographic information, we're tracking outcomes, we're tracking referrals to services. That's the system that we use for our coordinated entry, both for singles and for families, and into the future, hopefully for our youth and young adults. So yeah, it's our community database for tracking all of the good work that you all do.
And then as far as kind of the current topic in discussion are these commerce funds, is there any involvement from the CHHS side of things with those funds?
So we have not received any dollars from Commerce post that proposal that was submitted. I do know that Empire Health Foundation has received some funds and Catholic Charities has received some funds. We have received feedback from at least Empire Health Foundation that they have been requested by Commerce to utilize CMIS, and we're working with them on what that looks like. But it's a little bit of an indirect connection.
And then lastly, are there any questions in our audience for Jen? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Jen, for coming to
Thank you all.
The Homeless Coalition. Yes. Okay, next up we have Jessie Kramer from Providence. Oh yeah, from Providence. So she is going to talk to us about the importance of advance directives. And this is a huge topic, at least in especially in my previous role working in hospice, but it's very important to give opportunity for people who are, anyone really,
Exactly.
anyone a voice in how they want their care managed if one, they don't have any support, or two, that they can't make decisions for themselves. And so this is a big one, especially with our folks. So Jessie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And if you could have the mic a little bit closer
Okay.
to your, yes.
That's better.
And before we jump in, what was your very first job?
I debated this. I babysat forever. I'm the oldest of I think over 30 cousins. I'm the oldest granddaughter, so I was babysitting, I think, since I was 10. But my first actual paycheck came from Smiley's Dry Cleaners.
Smiley's, is that still?
It is no longer operational.
No longer operational. Weren't.
Not the best place, I don't
Okay.
think.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you about my favorite topic in the world, which always sounds weird to people, but I love talking to people about advanced directives, because in my time in this role, which has been about 2 years, I've learned that most of us have a general idea about advanced directives, but there's a lot of misunderstandings that keep us from having these conversations. So I just want to level set a little bit. So an advanced directive is a legal written document that allows you to name who you would trust to make healthcare decisions for you if you were not able to communicate, and lets you provide some guidelines for the type of care you would want. These forms are anywhere from 2 pages to 14 pages. So depending on how in-depth you want to get with specifics around the type of care you would want or not want, the forms can actually be completed fairly quickly. I brought a bunch of blank advanced directives today that are the 2-page version, and I always tell people that form can be completed in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. So I think a lot of people think of advance directives as like death documents, and this is going to be a really heavy conversation, and it is a big thing to think about, but these documents are really empowering. They allow individuals, which includes everyone, which includes our homeless friends, to say, this is who I trust, and this is what I want. So I am very passionate about providing opportunities for more people to understand advance directives and for more people to be able to complete their own. And my challenge to this group would be, if you don't have one yourself, that should be your first step in helping others with this process. After you've gone through this yourself, you understand it better, but you can speak to it better. You can say, gosh, I thought that when I completed mine. That's what I thought before I did this. After I did this, I felt such peace of mind. I felt empowered. I felt comfortable having this conversation with this person who I trust, who doesn't have to be a family member, doesn't have to be your spouse or domestic partner, just has to be somebody that you trust. So I think that's kind of my level set.
And these are a bunch of individuals who work with some organizations. If they were interested in getting more education about it, or kind of help coach how to talk to someone, how would you talk to someone about an advance directive, especially someone is in a vulnerable state as they are in, right, with the people who we work with?
Absolutely. So one is, if any of you would like more information or more training, let me know. I have a 1-hour training that kind of covers, I call it like Advanced Directive 101. It's a great starting point for most people. But how to start these conversations is challenging, and I really can't say this enough. Completing your own makes these conversations so much easier, because then how I start it with people that I care about is, hey, have you ever thought of who you would trust to make medical decisions for you if you couldn't? I have an advance directive that has named someone I trust, and I care about you, and I want to make sure you have this documented. And I think I have a lot of experience in having these conversations, so I know 98% of the time the response when I approach people about this is, thank you so much for thinking of me. I can't believe that crossed your mind. That means so much to me. I've been thinking about this. I would appreciate some help with this. A lot of people, this is kind of like a thing in the back of their heads. So you bringing it up, you just asking the question, means a lot to people. And I would say that not everybody's ready to talk about it right away, and that's okay. And you just say, I'm here as a resource. And then if you need more help, you can reach out to me for questions, for training, whatever I can do to help. What's Barry putting on the screen? Oh.
And with that, once these documents are completed, where can either the organization submit them to, or be kind of a keeper of this? Because I mean, we'll give patients after visit summaries, and then I'll see them outside of our clinic.
Right, 100%. I always say these forms are really powerful, but they're not magic. They have to actually get to the people who need this information. So you want to keep the original in a safe place, whether that's with you or with someone you trust. Then you want to get copies to the people who you've named as your healthcare agent, or who you would want to make medical decisions for you. And then you want to get copies to any healthcare systems you might encounter. So the blank advance directives I also made just like a 1-page document that has kind of how to get those advance directives to kind of the bigger players in the city: VA, Providence, Chaz, Multicare, and the Native Project.
And do we have, we got is that a question? Okay.
Question, go ahead.
The question is twofold. Is there a list of volunteers that would be open to being a representative in this? Because sometimes individuals don't have anybody they trust. Or is there agencies that actually do that?
That's a great question.
Can you repeat the question?
I can. Is there a list of volunteers that would be willing to be representatives for someone, or is there an agency that does that? Is that correct? So that's a great question. That would be lovely. I am not aware of any such groups. But I would say, you know, this does make you kind of think about who do I trust? Who would I trust to make healthcare decisions for me? A lot of times I know there's, you know, members of churches that would be willing. So sometimes it's just asking, hey, would you be willing to be this person for me?
And I ask that just because sometimes the projects get asked to do that, to do that.
Yes, yes.
Question right up front.
I'm Joe Shogan, I'm an attorney. I've drawn these up before, but I think what you've got here is a combination of a durable power of attorney and a healthcare directive. There's a healthcare directive form that's directed only.
Joe, you talk to the microphone. We have a live stream going and they can't hear a word you're saying.
Okay,
Thanks, Barry.
a lot of people think that's a benefit. I'm an attorney and I do healthcare directives. I do pro bono work now for the Spokane Bar Association Legal Referral. It sounds like we've combined two documents here. The healthcare directive that I've got is directed solely to the physician or the healthcare provider to say, I do not want artificial food and water, etc., for my treatment. What you're talking about, if you're giving somebody else the power to do that, that's a power of attorney. That's a healthcare power of attorney. And that has to be notarized, and you better trust whoever you give it to. So you're combining two different things here, and a durable power of attorney has to be notarized, like I said. Healthcare directive needs two witnesses that are not related to the party. And even with all that, you're still going to face a code or no code directive to the hospital. So it's not like one paper will do all this, but it's a start. And you're right. I think House of Charity provides post office boxes, let's say, for the homeless. You need to have somebody you trust, and you need to have a safe place to keep it. You could record it, except the recording fees now are $200.
Did you have a specific question, I guess?
Oh, well, the question is the form you brought need to be notarized?
Thank you.
Thank you. So that brings up a good point. There's a lot of confusion. The term advance directive covers a document that contains a living will and or a durable power of attorney for healthcare. The form that I brought today is a durable power of attorney for healthcare. In Washington State, it does not require a notary. It can be a notary or two witnesses. And for a lot of people, finding two witnesses is a lot easier than finding a notary.
Any other questions? Oh,
Anywhere over here.
Tammy.
No, and that's really one of the reasons why I love this document, because it does not have to be completed in a healthcare setting. It does not have to be completed by a lawyer. It is an individual, personal document that empowers you to say, this is an adult I trust to make decisions for me. And it should be more than just filling out this piece of paper. It should be a conversation with that person about what does an acceptable or unacceptable outcome look like to me.
And that question was, does a physician
So
need to
sorry.
sign off on it? No, that's okay. A question in the back?
Could a homeless person fill this out, stick it in their backpack, stick it in their pocket, when they get wheeled into the ER, say, here?
Yes, absolutely.
Question was, can someone...
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure we're live, right? Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah, the question was, can someone just throw in their backpack and then turn it in if they end up at the emergency department? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good job.
Also, I wanted to know about the 1 hour class.
It's just a class that I provide, so, and I can do it virtually, or if we have a big enough group, we could do it in person. Maybe we can talk afterwards about that. Yeah. Yes. And that brings up another good point, that these forms can be changed or updated. So as who you trust changes, as your preferences changes, these forms can be updated. So all you have to do is complete a new advance directive that negates the old ones, but you want to make sure you get copies of that new one to the same people that had the old one.
You mentioned that you will be coming back and have forms.
Yes, thank you, Barry. I will be coming back to these monthly meetings, and I'll bring forms. Providence Community Benefit has okayed as many forms as you need, so just let me know. And maybe Barry recommended that I ask you, Robert, to cue that at the beginning of the upcoming meetings, that I'm here with forms and can answer
Definitely.
questions.
Yep. Any other last questions? Going, oh.
It's only for living care, this form is. Yes, that's correct. And I'll be here for the rest of the meeting, so feel free to come up if there's something you wanted to ask but didn't feel comfortable in the group setting.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jesse, for taking the time to be with us. Enjoy having you. All right. So next up, we have Chris Patterson, which I have not seen him. He must still be at the Davenport for the symposium. Did I say that right? Symposium? Okay. So we'll just move along, and we'll have Zeke come up. Is that right? Or Megan? Both. Both? Might as well. You're both here. And you finally wore the same shoes as me. I knew it was going to happen someday. White Sambas, people. I don't think they make them anymore. Do they make them anymore?
What?
They do? Oh, okay. I never played soccer. I just like how they feel. Well, welcome. Back to the Spokane Homeless Coalition. If you could kind of give us kind of an update of what's been going on, maybe introduce yourselves, what Empire Health Foundation does or is, and then kind of talk about the Right Away Fund collab with Commerce and ETAL.
Sure. Zeke Smith, President, Empire Health Foundation. My first job was...
Forgot. You make me nervous sometimes. I'm just like, oh, what do I do? Oh, yes, first job, and you have to answer the same question, Megan.
Yes. My first job was informal as a deckhand on a commercial fishing boat. My stepfather was a commercial fisherman, and my mom was a fish buyer, so I got to work on the docks and on the boats quite a bit as a kid. What was your first job, Megan, and what's your job now?
Hi, I'm Megan Vincello. My current job title, I'm still getting used to it, project director for the ROW initiative, this commerce funding coming in, so the community engagement and assessment piece for the commerce funding.
What organization?
With Empire Health Foundation. I just moved from City Council, and before that I was working with on NHHS doing the homeless outreach team. My first job was the Easter Bunny at a restaurant.
No way.
Yes way.
What restaurant?
It was the Embarcadero in Newport, Oregon. My father was the executive chef, so he hired me on, and I was like 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking the Easter Bunny at Valley Village sometimes comes out and waves, and yeah. Awesome. All right.
Is it true that at the April Spokane Homeless Coalition meeting, Robert, that you will come as the Easter Bunny?
Yeah. Well, maybe. Tempting.
You'll know him by his shoes.
Yeah, I'll still be wearing Sambas in a full-out Easter Bunny outfit. But, yeah, go ahead.
Gotcha. So Empire Health Foundation, private foundation created in 2008 when Deaconess and Valley Hospitals were sold from Empire Health Services to CHS, Tennessee for-profit company. And when a for-profit company purchases a health system from a nonprofit company, the Attorney General and the Department of Health secretary or director direct where the proceeds of that sale go so that they stay in public benefit. So Empire Health Foundation was created in 2008. Our mission is to affect and improve health equity across the region, which we see as the inland Northwest, the 7 counties in the northeast corner, as well as the 3 tribes in our region, the Colville Confederated, the Kalispel, and the Spokane tribes. And we're here on the stage because over the last 6 months or so, we have gotten deeper involved in work that many of you have been doing for a long, long time. So we're pretty new to that. That's an important, I think, acknowledgement, but also have been trying to figure out what's the best way for us to use our resources, our position, our privilege to really affect this issue that is affecting many of us in our region, in our community. Specifically with the Department of Commerce Right Away Initiative, about a month ago, after the Department of Commerce had received the application, the proposal from the city of Spokane, they were in discussions with the United Way about specifically coordination of outreach and engagement services for the population out at Camp Hope. When it became clear to them that the United Way was not going to take that role on, they actually reached out to us and said, is this something you'd consider? Asked us to complete some questions and engage in a conversation with them. We received a letter of intent from the Department of Commerce to fund Empire Health Foundation to coordinate that work and then to subcontract with organizations to actually do the work of outreach and engagement. And we're in the process of still developing the actual contract, so identifying both what our plan is and then what resources the Department of Commerce will direct towards that. So we haven't actually received money from them yet, but we're in good conversations about what that will look like. And we hope that the actual outreach and engagement, specifically around how residents at Camp Hope can access resources to support moving towards better housing, because that is ultimately the goal that money is designed for, specifically that population on the right-of-way property to better housing. We hope that can begin pretty soon. We're working with 3 organizations on a peer navigation system, really at the core of the outreach and engagement work. Those organizations are organizations that have been working with that population consistently. Jules Helping Hands, Revive, Compassionate Addiction Treatment Services. So we're in the process with them in the same way we're in the process with Commerce of identifying what that is going to look like and what the flow of resources is to make sure that work can happen. One, to stabilize the reality for the population at Camp Hope. I think we're all incredibly lucky that things have been as safe as they really have for those residents and the neighborhood. A lot of that, I think, is we should be appreciative and thankful of, in particular, the work that Julie Garcia and Jules Helping Hands has been doing, but trying to figure out how we can stabilize the services, the population there, while also really pivoting towards and transitioning towards helping individuals there identify a path towards better housing. I think many of us who have been out there know that that path, one, looks different for each individual person, and two, it's a long path for many of the folks that are out there who have been affected by homelessness and a lot of the issues that surround that for a long, long time. So we have, as a community, we have a significant amount of resource. We have an opportunity through these funds to actually do something different. I think part of what we want to be able to do and why we stepped into this was recognition that there's got to be some coordination and a focus on how we effectively collaborate together to really address the inadequacy that we have in terms of addressing what's needed for this population. So I mentioned those 3 organizations because that's really a starting point in terms of building out this peer navigation system, starting with people and organizations that have been working there. But Megan can share a bit more about how, you know, it gives us collectively an opportunity as a community to say, what are the services that people need, who provides those services, and how do we start to activate that as a system together so that we can move as many of these folks as possible. One, with some urgency, because people need it. I don't think anybody would say that the living situation for the individuals at Camp Hope is a viable long-term solution. So we've got some work to do to, as we find ourselves coming into this gap potentially between too hot and too cold in our community, to try to move as many of those folks as possible. But I also want to be clear and realistic and let you know that there are resources from Commerce available to recognize this is a long road and it's going to take us a while to figure out how to do this. So happy to answer questions, but Megan can also give some good detail about where we're headed.
Yeah, and just, we'll go ahead, Megan, and then I'll ask you a question.
Sounds good. Yeah, so Barry is going to put up on the screen. I know a lot of you haven't been to the table or been asked to be at the table on how this is going to be built out and what services you have to offer if you're wanting to participate in this kind of project working down over at Camp Hope. And so I want to invite everyone on Thursday, September 8th, between 5 and 7 p.m. at Empire Health Foundation. We're going to open up our large basement. I don't know what the room is called. It's a large conference room where we're going to just start the discussions about what services are available in the community. I know that there's a lot of different organizations that work with specific populations that haven't been asked to be at the table yet. I am asking, this is a community-wide project, and we need as much help as possible for these individuals. And so between 5 and 7 p.m. on September 8th, I welcome everyone who is willing and able to come down and have these discussions so we can help build out a really comprehensive plan together because that's what's going to take.
Thank you. And one of the questions I have, so this past Tuesday, there was a town hall with specifically about what's happening with the Quality Inn. Is there any and there was some specific parameters around kind of the move-in and what that certain criteria. Is there any alignment with Empire Health is an engagement with what's happening there, as well as the other shelter systems like the Trent one that's going to be opening next Tuesday, or you know just the other systems at play?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Yes, so I think one of the things that we've got to build out in this project is parallel coordination on the housing side to what we're talking about in terms of outreach and engagement. So we've actually proposed to the Department of Commerce that we would have a local organization that would be thinking about and engaging in looking at what are all the existing opportunities for housing What are the requirements associated with each of those different options that are currently available? Where is there opportunity for expanding on those options if we had the right resources, which there is additional money from Commerce to be able to do that? And then where do we have kind of complete gaps in what's available that we need to be able to think about and apply some resources to do something different? So we think that that needs to be coordinated at a local level, and so we can have all those folks that are doing the peer navigation work engaged with folks that are doing, in essence, housing navigation work to say, okay, how do we line up what the needs are with what the opportunities are? We've started conversations with Catholic Charities just recently about how we specifically understand what the opportunities will be at what they're calling the Catalyst Project, the Quality Inn, and how that aligns with what the needs are in terms of people at Camp Hope. As I understand it, they're talking about a pretty specialized program there. So we're really going to lean into trying to understand what the kind of readiness requirements are for residents that'll be there, and then figure out how many folks are currently ready for that, and then what it might look like for getting other folks on a path to get there. But I guess the thing I really want to emphasize is we're going to need to have, and this is to the second half of your question, we're going to need to have clarity about all of the options that are available, as well as where we have the potential to build out new capacity, because we had 600 individuals at Camp Hope. They're not all going to land at the Catalyst Project, but even if they did, that's 110. They're not all going to land at the Trent Shelter, but even if they did, that's 150. So even if both of those are completely full, we still have a lot of need to identify other options. And frankly, we know that those two options, while an important part of like a holistic set of housing services, don't meet everybody's need. So we're going to work with Commerce to figure out how we can actually have that be an active part of what we're trying to build alongside of the work that the peer navigators are doing.
And is there going to be an assessment tool that either exists or that will be developed to really accommodate specifically, since it's specific for Camp Hope, to really determine who's eligible, what disqualifies someone for the existing, whether it be Catalyst, whether it be, other shelters, other permanent supportive housing, whatever. Is there an assessment that's going to be used, or has there been assessments that have already been done to capitalize on those as well?
Yeah, so we're definitely relying on the existing data and information that Jules Helping Hands has captured with residents that are there. And I was over there yesterday with Julie and know that they're still engaging residents and getting some of that basic information. And really that's just about kind of current situation, what access to identification folks have, and what are they able to articulate about their really immediate acute needs. So there is a need for another level of assessment. I think there's a couple of tension points there, just to call them out. As Jen said, we're going to use the CMIS system is the intent. We're required by Commerce to use HMIS, and CMIS is our local kind of access point for that. But it probably doesn't provide the kind of provider and user information that's needed to get at really ensuring that we really know what the path is, what the plan is for individuals, and then that we can monitor that and apply services effectively along the way. Because we will be walking alongside, the peer navigators will be walking alongside these individuals for, we anticipate, at least 3 years as they're working on their journey. So we want to have a mechanism for actually having real-time information inform what's happening there. The tension points are, it doesn't make sense for us to build a system for 600 individuals over here and not have it related to and connected to the rest of what is happening around addressing homelessness in this community. And yet, we don't necessarily have a system right now that will give us the ability to do that. So we're trying to figure out where can we use this as an opportunity to build some of that, but how do we make sure it stays connected to the larger system. That's part of the conversation about CMIS, but I think it's also a broader conversation than that, if we're being honest. So, and then the other tension point I would say is, you know, as I'm sure many of you know, a lot of these individuals have been assessed and assessed and assessed and assessed and assessed, and they haven't necessarily seen any change that comes from that. And we want to be really thoughtful about how and where we're asking them for information and the degree to which we can actually deliver on what they give us. And it's another reason why I'll just say having those organizations and the peer navigators at the core of this will really matter in terms of what we develop, because I know that they're going to be willing to be honest with us about where we're building a system that makes sense and where we're building a system that might sound good but actually doesn't make sense in terms of what we're trying to accomplish on the ground. Megan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that part of this that all of you can help with is really understanding how we can be mindful of the resources that are currently out there, and that we have populations of people that don't live at Camp Hope, and how are we facilitating this balance. We need to be really mindful with that, and so that is a discussion point that I'm hoping to have with all of you who are willing to come to that meeting. And it might not happen at that one meeting. This might be a continuation that we need to have further meetings as we build this out, but this is a long process. And we know that we have coordinated entry. We need to be able to utilize the systems that are currently there, but how do we be mindful about how we're addressing some of these issues and how we're navigating people through this process specifically at Camp Hope? And so that is primary on our heads. Barry?
Yes, thank you, Barry. So at what point, so I'm having a hard time making the distinction between the existing systems at play, which already exist, right? At what point do we encounter exploration of new infrastructure, new organizational systems to be incorporated in this picture? Because the assessments show, like you were saying, we could assess, but then also if you're assessing and identifying, oh, there's systems at play that these individuals don't really want to utilize, it's just kind of being, I don't know if any of you have been sailing and there's no wind, you're just kind of stuck out in the middle of the water, water being that there's all these unutilized systems, but yet the people don't want to use. So at what point, what breaking point happens where you explore other organizational systems that come in for that production of infrastructure?
When you find yourself at that point in the water, Robert, first thing I would say to you is, put your sail on the other side of the boat.
Yeah.
Just give it a shot. Give it a
Yes.
shot.
7 feet away.
So we have, as a community, an incredible opportunity with these resources that are coming in from commerce. So we could talk about whether or not the state should be providing this money or who should or what, but we could also just realize we got $25 million to try to affect a better system here in our region. And that's the approach that we're taking with this. It doesn't mean it doesn't create potential unintended issues as well, right? So we want to be really thoughtful about how we make sure that this is a connected part of the system. We've got conversations coming up with each of the different key players who are involved in the coordinated entry system. You know, we've talked about and had really good conversations about, so should people be doing a SPDAT while they're also doing this other assessment, which if you're in the field, you know what that means. The questions are real in terms of like, where should we be leaning into the existing system and better utilizing it, using some of these resources potentially to create more capacity in meaningful ways. That's part of what Megan is talking about in terms of getting people involved in the conversation. But secondly, we also know the current system isn't working. And that's not a critique of individuals or organizations that are doing the work. It's just a reality of where we currently sit. So I think the thing I would say that is like the balance point between where are we engaging with the existing system versus where are we trying to build new ways of addressing the needs is we really have to build this in a way that centers the reality and the needs of the folks at Camp Hope. That's what the dollars are for, and it gives us an opportunity to really lean into that. But we're going to do that cognizant of the fact that we want to work towards building and supporting a better system collectively. And I would be, silly if I didn't acknowledge that most of the folks, or many of the folks at least in this room, have a lot better understanding of both what works and doesn't work currently about the system than I do. So our job at Empire Health Foundation is not to try to make decisions about that, but actually just to create a space, which is what Megan's talking about, where we can work through some of that with a focus on how do we address the needs of this population in a way that looks different than what we've been able to do to date.
Are there any questions out there? We got one right here.
Yeah, so
can you repeat the question?
I will repeat the question. I know that this is only part of the whole plan, but I've been reading that your organization also owns some land and that there was a pallet home part of, where's that at? That was the question. And the answer is we, as a part of the city's proposal to the Department of Commerce, the city asked us to provide a proposal around how we might house pallet or tiny home community with some land that we have on the Sunset Highway. There's an existing tenant there, there's an existing building there, but we've got some unoccupied land as well. Well, it's occupied on one front, but there aren't people that are living there. So we put that proposal in. It was part of the city's proposal to Commerce. The city proposal had different tiers. The first tier was things that everybody agreed, we should fund this. That's where the coordination of outreach and engagement was. That's where the Catalyst project was. It's not where the pallet shelter was. The pallet shelter fell below that line, or the pallet community conversation. So we're not in active conversations about that at the moment. I mean, other than the fact that we've been doing a lot of engagement and responding to folks in the West Hills neighborhood who we know have some concerns about concentration of homeless service options. But it's not an active conversation. I do think that more broadly, as we think about what's needed for Camp Hope, and as we frankly think about what's needed for homeless individuals in our community, the idea of where transitional temporary housing represented by tiny homes, by pallet homes, is something that's missing in our region. And so the opportunity to continue to think about that, potentially with commerce funding, is great. Whether that happens at our property or somewhere else, those are all conversations in the future.
Questions? Other questions I can give the microphone to so the live stream people can hear it?
Good morning. First of all, thank you for being here. Forgive me, I'm relatively new to the system, and it's complicated. There's a Department of Commerce, and there's the city and project planning. Do you have any recommendations or path for, let's say, smaller organizations in the community? How do we align all this stuff? Can you give some guidance on that?
Megan, do you want to? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it's good. It's a complicated system. I'm relatively new to the community as well, and so I'm actually not the expert on what the system does and doesn't look like. But what I'll say is there's, I think, the question of what are the existing opportunities and resources that we have in our community that provide a provider, whether it's on a service side or a housing side, an opportunity to engage. Jen from CHHS talked a little bit about some of what the city has and where to access that. The county has some resources as well. The Spokane Housing Authority has some resources. So it's partly, I think, a function of getting a sense of like who are the funders in our local community that do that work, and then what does that look like. Commerce does also direct regular state resources towards some of these issues. But what we're talking about, what's called the Right Away Initiative, is a targeted initiative that was a part of the governor's budget. This year, 5 counties and 11 homeless encampments in those 5 counties have access to those resources, and it was very specifically about providing both services and capital dollars to support how to move folks from Department of Transportation right-of-way properties to better housing options. So it's a kind of a newer focus at this point. Some of those resources should continue for the foreseeable future, which is a good thing, and some of them are more one-time. But I would say, the city's CHHS department is supposed to be the entity in our town that has the best understanding of kind of what's moving where, so give Jen a call. But also, if you were to come to the meeting that Megan was talking about, that's an opportunity, I think, to hear about what else is going on in the community.
Yeah, and I think to your point, just how to get involved. I mean, this is an open call to everybody who's online right now and everybody who's in this room, and agencies that aren't here, spread the word. I think in a holistic approach to how we meet somebody's needs is we really have to understand their personal intersectionality and what that looks like. And there are many agencies that could touch point on specific individuals in this community down at Camp Hope. And I welcome everybody to be at the table. I really, truly think in the build out of whatever this plan is going to look like, it takes a community. This is going to take the community. And it's not just Empire Health or Commerce or the 3 agencies we talked about. This is kind of our call out. And so, we're going to build out kind of an agenda for next meeting, and it's just going to be really introductory. And again, I think there might be a need for more meetings, and specifically maybe there's working groups that come off that, so then we can create something together. And that's how I would say to potentially become involved in this project. So, did that answer your question?
Well, and I just want to chime in really quick about that. I think that it's really important that we hear back, just as COC over here, Dale, Brees, that we need to clarify the definitions of homelessness for the projects and for our community as we move forward, Megan and Zeke, because I think that might really help in that. But that's part of that planning of the September 8th. Let's sort of coordinate, integrate those definitions, because each agency might be running on different definitions. Just like the COC is low barrier, this is not all low barrier. Definitely, it's about the ROW, but I think we should clarify that. So.
Thank you very much. And with that, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We are 10 minutes past, so thank you all so much for coming down. Barry is going to be...
any announcements?
Any announcements up here?
Come up here, quick, because people
Thank
are
you so
anxious
much,
to leave.
Empire Health.
So, listen up for just a few seconds.
Hello, I am Ron Nelson with God's Love International. We are a new shelter to Spokane. We are at the corner of 930 West 2nd Avenue. We have a 110-bed facility. We have a 110-bed facility providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. We are the only one in the area that I know that is doing that. We are also providing mental health, spiritual health, educational services. So we need volunteers and we need help funding. So I have cards if anybody wants them, but our website is www.godsloveinternational. We moved from Deer Park down to Spokane to try and alleviate a problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Anybody? Going once, going twice? Thank you all for being here.